I knew something in me snapped the day Brenda smiled and said, "No raise this quarter, again, but we really value your loyalty." She said it like she was giving me a damn trophy, not slamming the freezer door on my 4th straight year of underpaid overtime. I sat there in her office, the scent of lavender oil and lies in the air, nodding like a good little soldier while every molecule in my spine screamed, "You're being played." 4 years of building their infrastructure from duct-taped legacy garbage into a streamlined, cloud-based ecosystem that could survive a Category 5 audit. And she was tossing me a company mug and telling me to be grateful. You want to know what makes a person go quiet? It's not laziness. It's clarity. The kind you get when the same manager who denied your last 3 raise requests calls you a critical pillar of the department, right before presenting your work as hers in the board meeting. Brenda could perform somersaults in moral gymnastics. Every quarter, it was a new excuse. Budget alignment, optics with upper management, or my personal favorite. You're so consistent it'd be disruptive to promote you. Right. God forbid we upset the ecosystem by treating the person keeping the damn place running with a shred of respect. And still I played the part. Smiled through Friday stand-ups. Answered Slack pings at 11 p.m. like some deranged help desk elf. Rebuilt our compliance rollout process after the CTO's cousin tanked the last one. And when we passed the Q2 audit clean, Brenda took the win like she'd hand-coded the entire sync script herself. I watched her do it. Watched the CIO clap her on the back. Watched the HR director nod with that glassy-eyed, corporate glaze, and I smiled. Because if I didn't, I'd start laughing. Or crying. Or both. If you're listening right now and thinking, "Damn, that's rough," do me one favor. Hit that like button. And for the love of all things caffeinated, subscribe. 97% of people who hear these stories never do. And it's what keeps the team pushing out more. Trust me, it helps more than you know. Anyway, it wasn't one moment that broke me. It was thousands of tiny cuts. For years of praise with no raise. Wow, we'd crash without you. But my title never changed. We're so lucky to have you. But my paycheck stayed frozen like we were back in 2020. So when I saw that job post from Skyline Tech on a random Tuesday, I clicked. Not because I thought I'd get it. Not because I was planning to leave. I clicked because for 5 damn minutes, I wanted to imagine what it would feel like to be wanted by someone who didn't see me as a glorified surge protector. I filled out the application on my lunch break. Brenda was in her office doing her usual performative pacing on a fake call. I uploaded my resume, added a quick cover letter, and hit send. The moment I did, I felt nothing. Just that numb buzz behind the eyes. The kind that tells you you've waited too long. I went back to my desk, finished rebuilding the server map she was supposed to do, and stayed late helping the new guy fix a sync error she caused. Same as always. But something had shifted. I didn't know it yet. Not fully, but a fuse had been lit. And Brenda? She was too busy taking credit for my work to smell the smoke. The first interview came 2 days later. A phone screening that felt more like a therapy session than a job call. The recruiter from Skyline Tech didn't just ask about my skills, she actually listened to my answers. When I explained how I'd migrated our entire compliance backbone without downtime, because Brenda forgot to inform legal about a policy deadline, she paused, then said, "Wait, you did that? Solo." And just like that, my voice cracked open with something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the sugary kind. The kind that grows in the cracks after everything else rots away. I wasn't used to being seen. Not really. At my job, I was the invisible scaffolding that held up Brenda's empire of polished bullshit. At Skyline, I was talking to people who actually understood what back-end integrity meant. Real engineers. Real architects. They didn't blink when I broke down my patch sequencing protocol. They asked follow-ups. I got off the call, stared at the wall for a minute, then laughed. Just this dry, broken sound that felt like shaking the dust off a long-dead engine. The second interview was a video call. One of the panelists pulled up my GitHub contributions before I even introduced myself. "Your rollback scripts are clean," he said, grinning. "Do you teach this stuff or just operate on wizard mode full-time?" I could feel my brain trying to explain it away. Maybe they were short-staffed, maybe they were desperate, maybe they didn't know what they were looking at. But I said thank you. Because it felt damn good to hear. Better than any of the hollow great work, Dean. Texts Brenda would blast out after parading my deliverables around like they were group projects. I didn't tell anyone at work, of course. Wasn't even real yet. Just a what if. Something to hold in the dark when the fluorescent lights of that cursed office started buzzing like angry hornets above my cubicle. I kept doing my job. Showing up early, documenting everything, helping the same junior analyst who still thought deploying without a rollback plan was efficient. It would have stayed quiet too, if it weren't for Outlook. See, when you work with a shared calendar system and your organization has all the security of a moldy basement door, one stray invite can slip through. I didn't catch it, just a 30-minute hold from Skyline's recruiter with call number 2 in the subject line. And of course Zach, sweet, nosy little Zach, sees it flash in my shared calendar and thinks it's funny. Whoa, Dean got a Skyline tech call coming up. Damn, shooting your shot, huh? I didn't even look up from my screen. Just exploratory, I said. Everyone interviews sometimes. He laughed, shrugged, and wandered off. I figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. By 3:45, Brenda was standing in the doorway of my cube, arms folded like she was preparing to deliver a TED Talk on disappointment. Her smile was thinner than printer paper. Dean? Got a minute? I followed her to her office. Her heels clicked like judgment across the tile. She didn't say a word until the door closed with that soft little hiss that always made my stomach twist. No pleasantries. No fake warmth. Just a flat stare, and then, "Is there something you want to tell me?" I blinked. About what? She gestured vaguely, as if the air itself had betrayed me. About why Skyline Tech thinks it's appropriate to book calls with one of my engineers during work hours. There it was. No confirmation. No curiosity. Just accusation wrapped in satin. I opened my mouth, not to lie, just to explain. But she raised one hand like I was an unruly child. Her tone dropped. You know what? Let's talk privately. See? And in that moment, the way she said it, like she already knew what came next, something cold curled in my gut. Not fear. Not shame. Just clarity. She didn't yell. Brenda never yelled. That would have required sincerity. No, she let the silence swell until it smothered the room. Then said it like a line rehearsed in front of a mirror. I'm deeply disappointed. I stared at the plaque on her desk. Department Head, Strategic Infrastructure Oversight. A title I built with my weekend's insanity. She sat back in her overpriced ergonomic throne, arms crossed like a prosecutor, who already had the verdict in her purse. You know, she started, with that syrupy tone she used in boardrooms. When I hired you, I thought you understood what it meant to be part of something bigger than yourself. My mouth stayed shut. Not from guilt. From instinct. Like watching a storm roll in, and knowing the tree's already been struck. This, she gestured vaguely at her monitor. This behavior? Sneaking around. Taking interviews. It's disloyal. It erodes trust. Even without a formal offer, it shows intent. She leaned forward, voice dropping. And intent matters, Dean. I tilted my head slightly. You ever read our contract? I asked, calm as still water. She blinked. Excuse me. No non-compete. No exclusivity clause. No NDA beyond standard IP protections. And I didn't take anything with me. Just explored an option. Her smile faltered for half a second before snapping back like elastic. Intent, Dean. You plan to leave. That's betrayal. How can I trust someone who already has one foot out the door? That's when she did it. Clicked a button on her keyboard with this smug flourish, like she was launching a nuke. I've revoked your access. All of it. You're not to touch any systems. HR will follow up. You can pack your things now. I blinked once. Twice. I didn't even ask what systems. She had no idea which ones I still controlled. Probably thought she was revoking just my email and Slack. Didn't realize she'd just iced the admin of the entire compliance audit scheduler midweek. She stood. You're done here. I rose slowly. No anger. No panique. Just silence, heavy as molasses. I nodded once, slow and deliberate. The kind of nod that says I see you. Then I walked out. Past the interns staring through glass walls like they'd just seen someone get executed. Past the analyst team pretending not to notice. Back to my cubicle. Except now my workstation was locked. She hadn't waited. I couldn't even print my resume or save bookmarks. Didn't matter. My laptop bag was already packed. Charger. Notebooks. A granola bar. And tucked neatly in the side pocket, a small USB key. Nondescript. Just 16 gigs. Nothing flashy. But inside? Documentation. Logs. Video captures. Change histories. And a full audit trail of every compliance flag Brenda had told me to deprioritize for optics. I never said no, but I kept receipts. I passed by the front desk. The security guard barely looked up. I dropped my badge in the tray, didn't even wait for a goodbye. The glass doors whooshed open with a hiss like steam from a pressure valve. Outside, the sun was too bright. The air smelled like spring and concrete and cheap aftershave from a salesman walking by. I took one breath, then another. Still no anger. Just that eerie, weightless calm that comes after a storm you didn't cause, but knew was coming. 3 steps down the sidewalk, I paused. Adjusted the strap on my bag. Felt the USB press against the fabric. Brenda thought she'd erased me with a click. She didn't know she'd just pulled the pin. Brenda wasted no time spinning her version of the story. By noon the next day, word had already trickled out. Decisive action, she called it. Handled swiftly. Can't tolerate disloyalty. Like I'd staged a coup instead of just answering a phone call from a recruiter. She pitched herself as the iron-willed leader preserving departmental integrity, tossing out the bad apple before it rotted the whole barrel. A few of the execs even clapped during the ops call. Of course they did. Brenda's real gift wasn't leadership, it was performance. She could lie like a televangelist and still pass the quarterly pulse checks with flying colors. But while she performed, I rebuilt. No aplausos, no slaxres. Just me, my laptop, and the rhythm of my own breathing in a quiet living room with the blinds drawn halfway. I updated my resume first, stripped it of corporate fluff, added metrics Brenda used to delete from reports because percentages don't impress leadership. Then I polished up my systems portfolio, a GitHub repo of internal tools I'd built, sanitized and repackaged. All my own work. All provable. She didn't even know it existed. I used to think I kept it hidden out of paranoia. Now I realize it was survival. The next morning, I drafted a quiet email. No attachments. Just a link to my portfolio, a brief note of thanks and a line that said, "Happy to answer any follow-up questions if helpful." I sent it to the CTO at Skyline, the one who sat silently during my second interview, just watching me. Less than 10 minutes later, I had a reply. He called me insightful. Said my breakdown of infrastructure sequencing was one of the cleanest he'd seen in a long time. Said I clearly understood operational risk beyond surface metrics. Then came the part that made me sit up a little straighter. He said Skyline had been in talks very early stage to form a regional partnership with my former company, infrastructure and data sharing. They liked the footprint, the onboarding pipeline, the price point. But now? Your context reframes some things, he wrote. That was corporate speak for. We're spooked. I stared at the email for a while. Not smug. Not even satisfied. Just still. Focused. Every beat of this felt cold and surgical. Not revenge, risk management. I wasn't here to burn bridges. I was here to show the blueprints of a house built on termite-ridden lumber. We scheduled a follow-up call. I walked them through our audit scheduler, the compliance rollout, the weekly failover drills that never really happened. Not because we couldn't, but because Brenda didn't want to admit the last patch had caused a sync issue we never resolved. I explained how she had instructed me to backdate the failover logs just in case, and how she forgot to inform legal when a minor sync bug skipped 4 hours of patient data tracking. The line went quiet for a while. Then the CTO said, "We're going to pause partnership talks for now. But would you be willing to formalize this? Off record. Ne idea. We'd want your assessment of backend integrity, just internal. Nothing shared." I didn't blink. Just replied, "Send the documents." Because this wasn't about Brenda anymore. It was about something bigger. something she'd built her name on, and something I'd built underneath it silently for 4 years. Now the foundation was creaking, and I was the only one who knew where the cracks lived. The thing about working in systems architecture is you get used to logging everything. Not just for compliance, for survival. Every change, every override, every time Brenda forced a deployment without full regression testing, I had it. Not because I thought I'd need it. Not because I planned anything. I'm not that kind of person. But when you've been thrown under the bus enough times to memorize the tread pattern, you learn to document everything on the off chance someone asks you to explain why the backend collapsed at 2:13 a.m. So when Skyline asked for a quiet integrity review, I didn't scramble. I opened my external drive and got to work. I started with the compliance audits, or what should have been audits. In reality, Brenda had taken to skipping dry runs entirely, replacing them with pretty dashboards full of mock data I'd been forced to populate. Just until we get actual logs in place, she said one year. We can't afford to flag issues this close to the CFO's quarterly report. That was 3 years ago. The dummy data was still in rotation. I had time-stamped proofs, raw logs that showed when certain tests had been manually triggered and backdated. Slack messages where she said things like, just clear the failed entries and mark the pass rates. The auditors don't read the JSON anyway. She didn't even try to hide it. She assumed I'd just delete the messages later, like a good little cog. But I didn't. I archived them, sorted by date, indexed them next to the compliance rollouts they allegedly covered. Every skipped test, every altered pass, every flagged patch I was told to bury under the other noise. I didn't rage, didn't pace. I worked in total clinical silence, line by line, folder by folder, like a surgeon stitching up a wound no one even knew existed. The Slack exports alone were damning. Whole threads where Brenda directed interns to run faux checks just to check the box. When one analyst pushed back, gently she wrote, "This isn't a tech issue, it's a leadership optics issue. Let's stay solutions focused." That analyst quit 2 months later. Brenda said she wasn't a cultural fit. I matched every policy flag to the version control system, cross-referenced deployment logs against Jira tickets, highlighted inconsistencies in patch scheduling, and noted where compliance signatures were forged with reused e-sign tokens. This wasn't about getting even. It was about drawing a map no one else could. One that showed just how much of the department's so-called excellence was duct tape and delusion. By the time I was done, I had a 42-page report, complete with screenshots, timelines, and an appendix of infra changes that were implemented without QA clearance, all signed off by Brenda's credentials. Some of them might have just been lazy. Some might have been pressured by finance. But at the end of the day, she owned every single one. I zipped the package into an encrypted file, attached it to a secure share link, and sent it to Skyline's internal legal contact. No commentary. Just a subject line, requested documentation, infrastructure integrity findings. They responded within the hour. We will be preparing a formal inquiry letter to your previous employer. The email read, legal and compliance attached. No drama, no fireworks. Just that quiet, controlled click of the first domino tipping over. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I felt necessary. Monday morning, Brenda strutted into the office like nothing had changed. Leopard print heels, vent Starbucks in hand, Bluetooth earpiece blinking like she was mid-deal with the Pentagon. She smiled, waved at the interns, tossed a "make it a productive one" over her shoulder like a glitter bomb of faux positivity. Then she opened her inbox. The subject line alone was enough to freeze the smirk mid-air. Skyline Tech. Inquiry. Compliance assurance request. Flagged. High priority. CCTIA. Coup. Audit chair. Sent from a legal inbox. Timestamped 7:01 a.m. She clicked. The message was only 4 paragraphs, but every word hit like a scalpel. In consideration of our early-stage partnership discussions, we're conducting internal due diligence on shared infrastructure viability. A third-party systems consultant has identified multiple discrepancies between compliance policy and actual system behavior during their prior tenure with your organization. We are formally requesting clarification on protocol enforcement, QA testing cadence, and data integrity assurance practices, specifically between Q2 2021 and Q1 2023. Kindly respond within 5 business days with documentation, system logs, and signed process attestations from the compliance lead and department head. Respectfully, Legal Counsel, Skyline Tech. She read it again, and again, and then a fourth time, slower now. Her hands clenched, then unclenched. The color drained from her face so fast, even the interns noticed. Brenda didn't read emails. She delegated them. Replied from her phone with vague, "Let's discuss one-liners." But this one? She stared at it like it was a death certificate with her name already printed. It wasn't the request itself. It was the phrasing. Protocol gaps raised by a third-party systems consultant. Not an accusation. Not a whistleblower. Just facts. Neatly wrapped. Legally protected. Sharpened like glass under the rug she'd spent years dancing on. She tried to call the CIO. Straight to voicemail. Then the CO busy. Slack lit up. "Are you free at 9 for a board touch base?" Skyline inquiry. Then another. "Need full transparency on audit prep. Legal's pulling last year's sync logs." Then, urgent. "Brenda, did we actually run the Q4 failover? Can you confirm who signed off?" The panic didn't hit all at once. It came in waves. First her fingertips went numb. Then her vision tunneled. Then the coffee she loved so much suddenly tasted like metal. Because here's the thing Brenda never understood. Power built on perception is sand. All it takes is one gust of documentation. And I had brought the whole damn windstorm. She tried to reply to the email, started 3 times, backspaced each one. You could practically hear the corporate instincts firing behind her eyes. What would sound strong but not defensive? Composed but not complicit? She finally typed, "We are happy to provide clarity, gathering internal artifacts, and will follow up shortly." She didn't send it. Because before she could, a calendar invite dropped into her inbox. Subject: Skyline Due Diligence Emergency Governance Review. Attendees Board. Legal. Audit. So. Coup. Required. Brenda sat there, frozen. For the first time in years, she wasn't running the meeting. She was the meeting. Somewhere else. Far from her little kingdom of fake dashboards and polished lies. I sat with my phone on silent. Watched the appointment pop up on LinkedIn's back-end tracker. Brenda hadn't blocked me there. She probably thought I wouldn't be worth watching. She was wrong. And now, the wheel was turning. And I didn't need to push it. By Tuesday, Brenda was in full survival mode. That special brand of frantic where everything sounds composed but smells like gasoline. Her first move was classic. Blame the departed. She told legal I had unauthorized access and manipulated logs post-termination. Claimed I was bitter, possibly unstable. Said my so-called findings were just artifacts of a disgruntled employee with too much time and a grudge. It was almost impressive, watching her pivot from corporate cheerleader to martyr-in-chief. She even cried in the hallway. Big, wet, perfectly timed tears when she accidentally dropped a file in front of the audit chair. Word spread fast. Dean doctored everything. He was always kind of obsessive, right? Brenda's devastated. She trusted him. What she didn't know, and what Skyline did, was that I hadn't just saved files. Ide video. Full admin console screen recordings, showing real-time credential use. Me logging in during authorized hours, making read-only backups, exporting system logs without altering a single byte. Everything was watermarked, time-stamped, and backed up redundantly across encrypted volumes. I hadn't cut corners. Brenda had trained me too well in fear to ever forget how to cover mine. Even better? Skyline didn't just take my word. They had their own forensic techs validate the logs against public NTP timestamps. Everything matched. File hash integrity, metadata trails, even IP routing. Every attempt she made to suggest forgery only made her look more uninformed. Or guilty. And still she flailed. She summoned a junior analyst, poor Zach, to reconfirm whether we'd run the Q4 failover. He said flat out, "I don't remember doing that with Dean. I thought it was postponed because of the policy freeze." She fired him the next day. Not officially, of course. Just removed him from Slack and revoked his badge before HR had time to draft the exit paperwork. Brenda was unraveling. And I wasn't even watching in real time. I didn't need to. Skyline kept me in the loop in the most deliciously quiet way. Blind copies, forwarded digests, anonymized call summaries. One note stood out. Skyline Legal has submitted excerpts of consultant findings to the Office of Regulatory Compliance as part of our and a transparency obligation. Redacted to remove all identifying employee information. Preliminary feedback from ORC. Concerning pattern of misrepresentation. Requesting deeper access review. There it was. A ripple. Skyline hadn't declared war. They just opened a window and let the sunlight in. And when you've been hiding mold behind polished drywall, that's all it takes. Meanwhile, I went on long walks, cooked real meals, slept. That's what no one talks about. The silence that comes after release. When you've done everything right, when your proof is airtight, when you're no longer trying to convince anyone of your worth. There's no vengeance high. No primales crime. Just stillness. Like stepping out of a factory and realizing how loud it always was. Now that it's finally off. That stillness broke Thursday afternoon with one email. Subject. Request for informational interview. Internal compliance. Sender. Head of regulatory risk. Former employer. Tone humble. Quiet. Careful. We are conducting an internal review of system practices and would welcome your participation to ensure clarity and accuracy of record. All communication will be off record unless explicitly agreed upon. Please let us know if you're willing. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Then I clicked reply. Short. Professional. Measured. Happy to assist. Because Brenda could spin and squirm all she wanted. But when the cleanup crew starts calling the one person you tried to erase, it means they've already seen who is really holding the structure up. The offer from Skyline came in quietly. No fanfare. No awkward recruiter call asking, so what would it take to bring you on board? Just a clean, direct email from the CTO himself. Subject. Formal offer, systems integrity led. Attachment. Full breakdown of comp, equity, benefits. The number nearly made me drop my coffee. Triple my old salary. Plus a 6-figure signing bonus. Remote first, equity stake, and an annual audit budget I'd only ever dreamed of at my last job. It was the kind of offer you think only happens to other people. The kind of role that doesn't just recognize your value. It relies on it. But I didn't shout. Didn't jump. Just leaned back in my chair and let the silence wrap around me. Because the real win wasn't the money. It was the shift, the tectonic one. I wasn't clawing for approval anymore. I wasn't building things just to have someone else slap their name on them. I was being brought in to protect the very thing people like Brenda tried to bury. Truth. Skyline didn't want polish. They wanted proof. And after everything, I had it in spades. I signed the offer the same afternoon and sent it back without ceremony. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't update LinkedIn. No humble brag post. No glossy new headshot. Just peace. Finally. That evening, the second shoe dropped. A journalist friend, one of those quiet contacts you keep for years and only ping when something really matters, forwarded a legal document to me with the subject line. Thought you'd want to see this. It was a notice of intent to file from a class action firm out of Chicago. Patient data mishandling. Violations of HIPAA. Undisclosed policy failures tied to compliance records from, you guessed it, Q2 2021 through Q1 2023. The exact span I documented. I read every line. Not out of spite, but discipline. The claims were damning. Falsified logs. Unsecured data pipelines. Breach indicators that were flagged internally and suppressed. I knew those sentences because I'd written them, just not for a courtroom. Back then, I was begging them to fix it. Now, someone else was going to force it. And all of it, all the damage they swore didn't exist, was finally catching up. There was no victory lap. No told you so email. Just me, sitting in a quiet kitchen, watching the storm hit the place that once refused to carry an umbrella. And I felt no glee. Just stillness. That's when I saw it. The last notification of the night. A single, unread message from Brenda. Subject. Can we talk? No punctuation. No preamble. Just 5 words that carried years of deflection, control, and now, desperation. I didn't open it. Didn't hover. Didn't read the preview text. Just selected it and hit delete. Not because I was cruel, but because I'd already said everything I needed to. In logs. In proofs. In silence. And now? There was finally room to breathe. The deposition took place in a nondescript conference room on the 12th floor of a downtown legal firm. All beige carpet, flickering LED panels, and cold water in plastic pitchers. It was sealed off record, NDA laced on every angle. But none of that bothered me. I'd already lived through the worst part. This was just cleanup. They asked questions. I answered. Methodically. Logically. Without venom. Yes, Brenda instructed me to skip regression testing on a Q3 deployment tied to patient scheduling. Yes, she told me to backdate compliance checks, just until optics settle. Yes, she personally signed off on a set of falsified QA reports to meet a partnership milestone. I didn't editorialize. I didn't embellish. I showed them receipts, Slack messages, emails, screen captures, and audit trails. Every file was hashed and timestamped. Every claim verifiable. The lawyers didn't blink. They'd seen smoke before, but rarely fired this cleanly mapped. One of them looked up midway through and said, "You could have burned the place down a year ago. Why wait?" I sipped my water. Because I didn't want fire. I wanted clarity. The company tried to downplay it, as expected. Administrative leave pending investigation was the official line. Brenda's headshot quietly vanished from the leadership page that same week. Rumor had it she was shopping around for PR crisis consultants. None took her call. The fines came next. 7 figures. Mostly settlements. A few regulatory penalties. Nothing that would kill them, but enough to make shareholders flinch. Enough to send the board into restructuring mode. And me? I stayed quiet. Didn't speak to reporters. Didn't post anything online. Just did the work I'd always done, only now, for people who actually respected it. Skyline, meanwhile, played it smart. Launched a full campaign around ethical architecture, transparent systems, defensive design. No names. No hubs. Just phrases like, "We don't build on silence, we build on evidence." The campaign went viral in our little corner of the tech world. A few of my old colleagues messaged me, asking if I helped write it. I didn't respond. Some things speak louder without a reply. Weeks later, I found myself walking downtown, coffee in hand, when I passed the old building. The one where I'd spent 4 years pouring myself into servers no one else understood. The one where I was told raises weren't in the budget, but fake dashboards were. I paused at the corner. The glass doors were smudged. A new receptionist sat behind the front desk. No one looked up. I didn't stop. Didn't even glance up at the old floor. Just kept walking. Later that evening, a courier delivered a thick envelope to my door. Heavy paper. Real ink. Skyline letterhead. Inside a short note. After a final review of ongoing integrity concerns, we are formally withdrawing all pending partnership discussions with your former employer. Our teams must operate on trust. Thank you for helping us protect that standard. Executive Committee, Skyline Tech. I held the letter in both hands. No fireworks. No revenge speech. Just a signature that severed the last tie Brenda's empire had to anything future-facing. And I smiled. Not because it felt good to win. Because the wheel had turned. And I was finally done pushing it uphill.